Scotty, do you hear me? Scotty, are you out there? There's something about this game. Thing. What's up, Internet? This is Jay, Nerd Rage Against the Machine here. As long as I've started this channel, one of the first things I really wanted to do was to do a review of all of the Star Trek role-playing games, the multiple iterations. Star Trek has been part of role-playing since 1978, which is 4 years after D&D. Now, for some perspective, it would take till 1987 before we'd see a Star Wars role-playing game, and like 2006 before Battlestar Galactica. So I think that these are two very nerdy pursuits, but also they kind of merge together. You know, the idea of wanting to be part of the Enterprise crew is something that Trek fans have wanted for a long time, and a game where you get to play the role of Starfleet officers, you know, engaging in those 5-year missions to seek out new life and new civilization and boldly going where no one's gone before. Yeah, it's appealing. And this here is the first one. This is the second print of the game Star Trek Adventure Gaming in the Final Frontier, which was written by Michael Scott. No, not that Michael Scott. But saying that, it is an interesting game. It's very cool, very different. And to be fair, as it is a game that is so early in the hobby's life cycle, I will say that 99.9% of every complaint I'm going to have about this game, and anything I nitpick or gripe about in this review, can easily be defended by the phrase, yeah, it was the first, man. It was old. This came out the same year as Gamma World would have. So, you know, if I sit here and say, well, the production values aren't as good as the newer Modiphius version, well, no shit, Sherlock. It's from 1978. Look at Gamma World. It's not that much less production values than that by any stretch. Saying that, there is almost no art other than the cover. In fact, even the back is pretty much blank. It is thin, like paper thin. We're talking like 40 pages. In fact, so much so that FASA, the next company that would make a Star Trek role-playing game, when they did, they made a box set with 3 books. One for, like, you know, source material and fluff, one for the players, and one for the GMs. Each of the books in that little box set is thicker than this guy. This is the entire RPG versus that, and this is, again, the next iteration of this kind of product, of a Star Trek role-playing game. The other thing is that as the Star Trek universe has evolved, this game has kind of been left in the dust. When this game came out, the only 2 sources of Star Trek media, except for like maybe, you know, comic books or novels that don't really count, would be the comic or the TV show and the animated series by Filmation. So that's one thing that this game focuses heavily on. There is, you know, stats for Cations, Doans, and all those Star Trek animated series stuff, because, again, that's more information we could put into it. And that's, you know, certainly a hard thing when you're designing an RPG based on like one movie or one TV show, especially early seasons. You don't have a lot of material to work with. You know, and as a good example of that, actually, when FASA would do their Star Trek game, some of their last products were TNG released, and it's kind of laughable because, like, they put a full-page write-up of the Antikin and the Soleil, which were in one episode of the first season and would never be seen again, but they were aliens that we knew about, that there was something we could write about, versus, you know, later RPG iterations like the Modiphius one, where, you know, there's no material on the Antikin or the Soleil, but there is plenty on the Borg and the Cardassians and Ferengi, because, again, those are now what we know of as staples in Star Trek. This game kind of, again, is limited to those two basic mediums, the TV show and the cartoon. Now, again, that could be a reason to gripe about it. It's a reason, certainly, I can understand why some fans would look at this and go, yeah, that's not for me. Fair enough. You know, there are always going to be those fans who started with TNG, and that's old Star Trek to them, and that really weird crusty stuff with William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy is just not up my alley kind of people. I'm not one of them. I love classic Trek. And saying that this game does a very good job, though, of capturing the feel of original Star Trek. I ran it recently for my crew, and it was kind of fun. We ran the adventure in the module where your shuttle crashes, and you're looking around the planet. And the first time they met a killer plant, one of my players kept joking about the fact that he could just imagine, in his mind's eye, this, badly made prop of, some guy in a tree suit shaking his arms, and then, when it shoots off these poisonous darts, you just hear that sound, and then, you just see the red shirt with like 3 darts sticking out of him. They just, pause the camera long enough to put them there. And yeah, that's true. That's how it would have been. The system is very cool, very simple. One oddball thing is it's divided into a basic and advanced game. And in the basic game, you actually play the crew of the Enterprise. So instead of, like, I'm going to build my own ship and I'm going to build my own crew, it's, who's going to play Kirk, who's going to play Spock, who's going to play McCoy. Now, again, that's something that today we would think, well, that's just terrible. Why would I want to play, if I buy a Firefly game, I don't want to play, force my players to play Mal and Jane. But again, 4 years after D&D, this made some sense. The advanced game does allow you to build your own characters. And it's, there are some things missing, but, again, it was the time frame. The material here is also very densely packed. I would say it's probably tough for somebody who's a new role player today who is used to slick graphics and glossy production values to find this easy to read. I mean, D&D 5th Ed, you've got, again, call-outs and things like that on the page to make it easy to understand. And I will say D&D even 5th Ed is more complex than what's here, but because of the way that this is written and the time it was written, I could understand where that would be a very hard product to read. And I think a lot of that, again, goes back to, this was never intended to be at Walden Books or B. Dalton's or the like. This was intended to be, at Al's hobby store. They even sold miniatures for it, so these are guys coming off of Napoleonics and stuff that were really, their target audience. And to that end, it could be a tough sell for a younger playing group, and I totally get that. But it is a really fun game. It really is a lot of fun, and it felt like that. One cool thing I thought was in the mechanics was this idea that you actually declare your actions and then determine initiative, so that you've kind of locked yourself into this position of, this is what I'm going to do, which, again, puts a little more of a gamble to it. I'm going to do this, but that guy's no longer where he's supposed to be or what have you. It really does work well, and I think, again, it serves the genre, which is really the entire purpose of a game like this. Now, again, Star Trek as a medium will evolve, and the games evolve with it. But as a first step, this was actually very good. And I highly recommend it for Star Trek fans who are looking to see that early origins of the genre. It is tough to find. It's like an eBay-only kind of thing. But again, it is interesting, at least on that historical document level, and I think it's well worth it, and even worth running today. And with that, all I can say is happy gaming and live long and prosper.